and welcome back to my channel. I'm Holly, and this week we're going to be learning how to throw a donut on the wheel. So it literally looks exactly like it sounds. It's going to be a hollow donut shape. You can use these to cut them up and make them like hollow tubes. If you don't have an extruder, you can use these to, end up making planters out of them, cut them up, whatever you may need this hollow piece for. We're gonna be going over that. If you haven't watched my how to throw double-walled pots video, I would suggest going back and looking at that. It is going to kind of go over a little bit how we separate the clay into two separate sections to throw. It might be helpful as a precursor to this video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we have our clay centered. Now at this point in time, you want to determine how big you want your donut to be. If we want it to literally be this size, we're not gonna open out of the center, we're gonna leave that by itself. Or if we want to make this bigger, which is kind of the harder of the two, I feel like, we're gonna go ahead and open it and bring all this clay out so that we can work on it a little bit further out into the diameter that we would essentially want our piece to be. So, just for the sake of going over just kind of the basics of it, I am going to do what I would consider the harder one, where we kind of pull it out so that way we don't have anything in the center here. I'm gonna go ahead and open this, and I'm gonna get my finger all the way down to the bottom. We're gonna pull out. So we have now kind of gotten all of our clay out of the inside. When I got my finger to the bottom, you probably saw that I had a little bit of excess. I just went ahead and cleaned that up with my sponge just to kind of see exactly what we're looking at here. Now this can be hard because getting to this point, this may have gotten a little off balance because essentially there's really nothing to hold it in place in the middle here. We're just kind of relying on the fact that it is stable enough when I pulled this out and flushed to the bat that it was going to stay here. If this does get a little bit off center when you do this, I suggest this move, where I'll put one hand on one side, I'll just kind of grab with my other, we just kind of cup. So I'm pushing down and I'm squeezing in. So we're kind of centering it while it's open here. Okay, so now that we have this fully centered, right where we want it, this is gonna be kind of where the center of our donut is going to end up starting. So from here, we're gonna go ahead and split the clay. So I'm gonna kind of find the middle, and if it's up at a point, you can go ahead and just kind of grab and push down a little bit to kind of make this top area a bit more flat. So that way when we split it, it feels a bit more even. So I'm just gonna take my finger and I'm gonna find directly the center. I'm just gonna push down. So instead of opening in the middle, we're literally gonna open directly in between clay. All right, and if we want to check our depth at this point, just to see how thick that bottom is, we can do so with our needle tool. So I'm gonna go ahead and check my depth with my needle tool, drop it in there, because we're not gonna be able to fix this at all later. And I think we're doing pretty good here. So we'll go ahead and keep going. So I'm gonna go in and just kind of take out the water and compress here, just like you would any other pot bottom, to make sure that it doesn't crack. And from here, I'm just going to work on the inside and then the outside. Now you can do this kind of whichever way you want. I just always prefer starting from the middle here. I'm just gonna kind of lift and pull like we would a normal pot. I'm gonna try and really get the height in here as best as I can. And I really don't think that's gonna get too much taller. So again, I'll just kind of wipe up this bottom here and here, and we'll go for the outside. Now the outside seems like it did get a little bit more, so I can count on this probably being a bit taller than this, and that's fine as long as they can reach each other in the end. So we'll go ahead and lift. All right, so now that I have my two pieces kind of tall and thin where we want them, we're gonna go ahead and kind of start to create that round shape. Now, if you just want this to kind of be straight on one side, rounded the other, straight on both sides, both rounded, you'd kind of adjust this, but you can kind of see how both my walls go straight up. I kind of want this to really have some nice curves on the outside. So I'm gonna go ahead and bend the inside one a little further in. Kind of rounding that out and taking the top edge over. We're starting to get there. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on the outer edges, and I slowly like to kind of inch them both in instead of just going for it. I feel like it does make for a nicer seam. It also just ensures that, you know, you don't end up doing it too fast and then messing up your shape, because once this is closed, it's going to be very hard to fix anything. Go ahead and take some off the bottom here, kind of get that shape a little more to what we want. Once it starts to get a bit more narrow, I like to really use my sponge to kind of smooth or push that bottom edge out. All right, and I think I'm just gonna kind of go for it at this point. So once I get here, I kind of just like to slowly bring this in. Now, one thing I do want to mention is I do like to try to attach my interior, my exterior walls at the same level. So we don't want this to be touching like the top rim of this inside wall. You kind of want them to go straight into each other. So you want to make sure that whichever one is taller, that you're bending that one down first and probably a little bit more drastically, so that way it ends up fitting the level of the inside. So you can kind of see how these are a little bit more level with each other now. So once we get here, I'm going to start to kind of do this together at the same time. And I kind of like to give it a little push, or almost like a tiny pinch here, just to kind of make sure that goes in perfectly. But try to do this in a way that isn't so harsh that, you know, you're not changing your shape too much. And there we have our donut. And I like to kind of go over with a sponge, or maybe you want to go over with a rubber rib, just to kind of get this whole thing to look nice and even. And sometimes things will separate a little bit, like what's happening here. I'm just gonna kind of pinch this in a little bit more, give a little bit of affirmation here. And if this does start to peel away as it dries, you can go over this with a coil, because now that you have your base, you know, shape here, it will be easier for you to kind of refine those edges hand building wise, whereas like making an entire donut by hand is going to be a lot more difficult. All right, so there we have it. We have our giant donut. Now I do have a bunch of people who will just kind of cut this in half or into like little quadrants here, and you can use these for like tiny planters, you know, whatever you decide to do. These can also be like nice little wall hanging pockets if you choose to end up taking out the top edge of the top half. So there you are. All right, everyone, so there you have it. That is how to throw a donut on the wheel. If you guys end up using this video to make anything, go ahead and, you know, tag me in any sort of social media. I'd love to see what you guys end up doing with any sort of the tutorials that you have watched, whether it's from this video or previous. But if you liked this video, go ahead and hit like, subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week.